This is the Retirement Key Podcast with Abe Abich, founder of Abich Financial Services.
In your working years, investing, it's pretty straightforward. You save, you invest, you focus on the long-term growth. But as retirement gets closer, as with everything else, the rules do begin to change. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. This is Abe Abich, financial advisor, founder of Abich Financial Services. I'm Heather Branch. Abe and I are going to work through, Abe, what should change, what should not change, and more importantly, perhaps, some of the mistakes investors make as they move from growing their money to spending it in this next phase. So let's start with the what should not change part of our investing as we get closer to and into retirement.
Sure, let's do it. So what shouldn't change? As retirement gets closer, some investing principles remain the same. Let's discuss those. Many investors assume they need to completely overhaul their portfolio once they reach their 50s or 60s, but that's often not the case. Long-term growth still matters because retirement may last 20 to 30 years or even more than that into some people's 90s. Diversification remains one of the most important risk management tools available to investors. We see this all the time. People oftentimes need to be more diversified than they are, Heather, and they might think they're diversified. One example is that they have all their money in stocks, but they'll say, well, I'm an international and I'm in small cap and mid cap. Well, you're still all in stocks, right? So that's not diversification to a retirement planning firm.
Right.
Trying to time the market is no more effective at 60 than it was at 40. Investment decisions should still be driven by goals, your objectives, and strategy, not headlines in the market or short-term market moves. Regular portfolio reviews, and we do them with our clients usually 4 times a year, and rebalancing remain important regardless of age. Retirement doesn't automatically mean eliminating stocks. No, in fact, that wouldn't be good for most people. Most retirees still need some level of growth to help combat inflation over time. One thing that is common, Heather, with a lot of people we meet with is they're usually taking on too much risk, or a lot of people are taking on too much risk at the point of retirement. So we might help them reduce their stock or equity exposure some, but more of a balanced approach and plan as they're heading into retirement.
Balance, obviously, keyword. That's what we are looking to, and rebalancing things as we get into retirement. So let's now talk about what we should think about changing.
What should change? So if some of the most important investing principles stay the same, what actually should change? Well, the closer you get to retirement, the more your portfolio needs to balance growth, income, and risk management. So we call it the retirement mountain. In your working career, you're accumulating, you're going up the retirement mountain. That's the ascent. You get to the point of your retirement, we call it the retirement descent. The descent, as you're heading down your own retirement mountain, is where you want to start incorporating things like tax planning, healthcare planning, income to replace your working income, and also building in some protection, making sure the risk management is there. The purpose of the portfolio begins shifting from accumulation to future retirement income. Again, think about it. Your working paychecks are going to slow down or totally stop. We need to replace the working paychecks with paychecks from what you've saved over the last 30 to 40 years. Asset allocation becomes more important because retirement losses can be harder to recover from. So we'll talk about sequence risk and the risk to a retiree that when the markets are down, if they're withdrawing at the same time, they can have double negatives. Having some money set aside, we talk about the bucket approach, some for safety, some for growth, some for emergencies. Very, very important. Time horizon, risk tolerance, and expected income needs should play a larger role in investment decisions. Again, because we're retired, we don't want to look back. We don't want to go back to work simply because we made some unwise financial decisions and maybe took on more risks than we should have. Diversification should extend across stocks, bonds, and cash rather than relying too heavily on any single asset class. I just mentioned that example a minute ago, and having too much in stocks or equities, which is common. Risk management becomes increasingly important as retirement approaches because you don't want to take a big loss at the point of retirement. Portfolio reviews and rebalancing becomes critical to ensure investments remain aligned with your goals and objectives.
Obviously, there are things that don't change. There are things that do. As we adjust for retirement, you were mentioning how to not have one over the other, the right mix of investments. It's also about understanding the risks that become more important at the stage of life, perhaps even risks that do they really even exist before retirement?
Yeah, and sequence of returns risk is one of those risks that a lot of people haven't even heard of, Heather, because most people, again, are working, they're accumulating, socking money away into their employer plans. They haven't gotten to the distribution phase. So a lot of people haven't even heard of sequence of returns risk.
Right.
But that's one of the biggest risks that pre-retirees, or I would say retirees, because they're going to start withdrawing money, don't know about. And it's not a market crash itself that is the risk. It's the risk that people have monies in the market, that they're relying too much on the market, that the markets go down and they're withdrawing. They don't have a safe bucket of money to go to during the market downturns, and they have double losses or double negatives at once. So sequence of returns risk refers to the impact of the timing of market losses, especially in the early retirement years. If you're incurring sequence of returns risk, the double negative or double whammy, as I call it, in that first 5 to 10 years of retirement, it can totally change the trajectory of a retirement plan. And a lot of people aren't aware of that until they come and meet with us for the first meeting. So two investors can earn similar long-term results and achieve dramatically different results depending on when negative returns occur. That's a really, really important thing to understand as you approach retirement and are in retirement. Market declines just before or shortly after into retirement can be especially damaging. Again, think about it. You're 2 or 3 years into retirement, you take some big losses, and you're withdrawing money out at the same time. That negative 20% loss in the market, coupled with your 3, 4, 5% withdrawal, you just made that a 25% loss, and now you got to dig out of a deeper hole. And that becomes hard because the next year you got to take money out again, right? You don't want to go back to work. So the years immediately surrounding retirement are often the most vulnerable period for this type of risk. This is one reason why portfolio construction becomes increasingly important as retirement approaches, so people can get out ahead of this before they retire. A lot of people we meet with already have the money they need saved to retire 5 years before they retire, 3 years before they retire, sometimes 7 years before they retire. They can be super proactive and put together a plan in place so they know exactly what's going to happen, when they retire. Understanding these risks is important, but knowing about them and avoiding them are two different things. In fact, many of the portfolio mistakes happen because investors react emotionally to retirement and market headlines.
Well, then let's talk about the common mistakes that you see with investors emotionally making decisions because perhaps they don't have that right plan in place. And this idea about two of the most common mistakes: too much risk or not enough. And we just want to be somewhere in between.
Yeah, and typically we'll see people taking on too much risk, Heather. It usually errs on that side versus not taking enough risk. But sometimes people have way too much cash or they're not taking enough risk, and we'll recommend, say, hey, you actually need to take more risk. You could live another 30 years. You don't want to be too conservative or so conservative that you don't even keep up with inflation and things like that. So some investors become overly aggressive in an effort to maximize returns before retirement. And I would say if you've hit your number, especially you're a few years away before retirement, you've hit your number, let's say that number's $3 million, man, do everything you possibly can to be proactive in putting together a plan right now to lock in as much good stuff as possible, right? When I say lock in, I mean protect what you've built as much as possible by putting together a really well-balanced plan. Others become overly conservative and move too much money into cash, and sometimes we'll see that. And you don't want to be on one side of the fence or the other. You kind of want to be right in the middle, or maybe leaning a little more towards, growth and a little more in the market than not. Holding excessive cash can create long-term purchasing power and inflation challenges. Some investors fail to rebalance and then end up with a portfolio that no longer reflects their goals or their risk tolerance. Emotional reactions to market volatility, and I would say the news headlines, can oftentimes lead to poor investment decisions. And finally, retirement investing is about finding the appropriate balance between growth, income, and protection. You can do that all in one plan.
And you can help us do that, by the way, as you're listening or watching this podcast. If you're ready to connect to Abe and his team, you can do so by going to theretirementkey.com, because the good news is, Abe, a lot of these issues can be addressed long before they become problems. So let's talk about steps somebody can take right now to evaluate where they are, what they need to adjust.
Number one, review your current asset allocation. We call that a portfolio x-ray. Understand where you are today. What are you invested in? What are the pros and cons of what you've done today to get you to today? How should that potentially change as you head into retirement or get closer to retirement? Number two, determine how many years you are from retirement. And the closer and closer you get, the more important it becomes to put together a plan in place to continue to grow what you have, but also protect what you have. Number 3, evaluate whether your portfolio is still built primarily for accumulation, or is it also built for future income? A lot of people we meet with, it's still built for accumulation, not a lot of protection in place. Number 4, stress test your retirement plan against a significant market decline. That can be done through our Portfolio X-ray. It's a deep dive, under the hood analysis on everything someone has done up into retirement. Number 5, make sure your investment strategy aligns with your retirement timeline and goals. So as retirement approaches, investing becomes less about chasing returns. It's really less about the number and the return and more about making sure your money can support the life you want to live, support the dreams you have in retirement. A lot of that, protection becomes more and more important the closer and closer you get to retirement, especially when you're in retirement, because you don't want to go backwards. So we can help you to review what you've invested or how you're invested, where you may need to adjust and make changes. Reach out to us on our website, theretirementkey.com. Click on the links posted here below, and we look forward to meeting with you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Key Podcast with Abe Abich. To learn more about Abich Financial Services, visit theretirementkey.com and join Abe for his radio show, The Retirement Key, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 8 a.m., 2 p.m., and 5 p.m.
Abish Financial Wealth Management is an SEC registered investment advisor. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and the SEC has not approved or verified this communication. As a registered investment advisor, we are a fiduciary under federal law and owe our clients duties of care and loyalty. Abish only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. This material is for general informational and educational purposes only and is not individualized investment, legal, or tax advice. Investment advice is provided only after engagement under an appropriate advisory agreement. Structured notes, annuities, Roth conversions, and related strategies involve risks and may not be suitable for all investors. Structured notes may involve issuer credit risk, limited liquidity, capped or conditional returns, loss of principal, and protection features that may not apply in all market conditions. Annuity guarantees depend on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurer and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges. Roth conversions are taxable events, and outcomes depend on individual circumstances, future tax rates, and investment performance. Third-party rankings or recognition are not guarantees of future results. Endorsements are representative of any client's experience. Criteria and fee information are available upon request. Any hypothetical or illustrative scenarios referenced in marketing materials are for demonstration purposes only, do not represent actual client experiences or guaranteed outcomes, and should not be relied upon as predictions of future performance. Investors should review all offering documents, understand applicable risks, and consult qualified financial, tax, and legal professionals before acting. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Endorser is not a client, and this testimonial has been compensated. Opinions are their own. Compensation may create a conflict of interest. Testimonials may not be representative and are not a guarantee of future results.